Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey, what's up, all you fellow gardeners out there? It's going to be episode 3 of the Compost Pile. Welcome back. We're glad to have you here. Compost Pile is a gardening podcast about all things gardening, composting, homesteading, you name it, we got it. I'm Aaron Barnhill, as always, and your host, David Poole, owner of Mid-County Farm and Feed. David, tell us what today's episode is going to be about.
So we're going to keep building off the first two things that we talked about. We talked about soil and fertilizer.
I love fundamentals.
Yeah, fundamentals. So today we're going to talk about kind of site selection and things that you need to have a grasp on before you ever put a seed in the ground, before you throw a transplant in. And if you already are growing, some things that you might take a step back at and look just to make sure, is everything really in the right place?
So you're just kind of talking about all of the inputs of an area, right?
Yeah.
So if I plant this one plant or tree or shrub here, I need to be aware of all of the surrounding factors, right?
Right. So we need to look at what is the sunlight like?
And the sunlight throughout the day.
Yeah, throughout the entire day. Is it so we can classify, will the plant grow in the area that we have? Is it a full sun plant? Is it part sun, part shade? Or is it a full shade plant? What kind of lighting do we have? Really, when are we getting that full sun? It's important.
So that's the other thing, too, I was going to ask you about, is because I know that on the planting instructions of plants, I always see, moderate light for indoor plants or full bright light.
Yeah.
I see full sun, part shade. I see all of that. But then when I talk to people about this, a lot of people will say that plant likes morning light, right? They'll say it likes evening light, stuff like that. How important is that?
It's incredibly important. And really, when you think about full sun, because of where we live, full sun and our microclimate as a whole in Southeast Texas, full sun is pretty hot. It's not very pleasant, It's if you go out in the afternoon and you're in full sun with no shade, you're miserable.
For the majority of the year.
Yeah.
For almost all of it.
You're miserable. And when you think about how hot it is during the growing season for a lot of things, or in the fall, the beginning of the growing season, it's really, really hot as we move out of summer. That full sun is often overbearing.
Sure.
And as we talked about last time, how the sun and heat and high humidity burns up nutrition. And it makes the soil quality poorer.
Mm-hmm.
Then it makes that plant even more stressed. So you really, full sun here, if you can get morning sun to midday or early afternoon sun, before you get to that latter part, 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock, because sometimes, honestly, the hottest part of the day here is three to 5.
Yeah, it's like 3.
Yeah.
It's true. It seems like to me that some of those things are going to be even harsher on a seedling or a transplant or something,
Absolutely.
right? So timing is also really important. But when we're talking about the factors surrounding a plant, we have sun. Let's see, what else do we have? Shade. Shade is also the absence of sun. We have humidity. Is there a point in someone's yard where humidity could be variable?
Yeah, so you can have microclimates within your own yard, within your own areas. So from front yard to backyard, from left side to right side, there can be factors. A good example for me in my backyard, on the right-hand side, it's full sun, no shade. It gets really, really hot, and it's a lot more difficult to keep plants thriving. But then I go to the left side where I'm moving closer to trees, and I get a lot of blockage from the sun, or I get more filtered light, and that filtered light is enough to provide enough resources to the plant.
But not burn them up.
But it's not burning them up.
Yeah.
And that really plays a huge factor into water usage. So you talked about seedlings, they having a little bit more delicate, or being a little more delicate.
The roots are smaller, everything,
They do need consistent moisture. You don't want them to dry out too fast because they're not that big of a plant. So if they wilt and they kind of wither out, it's going to be a lot harder for them to recover.
It's this little, so it dries out so easy. Yeah.
So, when you're looking at sunlight and positioning of where you're going to plant things, you got to pay attention to it, because if you can achieve some shade or filtered light here is going to be the equivalent to full sun somewhere else.
That makes a lot of sense. One thing that I can tell is indicative of the conditions where something is when I look at the grass in my backyard, right? So I have a pear tree that leans over and casts, at its base, casts like a full shadow, right? But then as you go further out, it's more of that filtered shade that you're talking about. And then I have spots in my yard that's full blast sun, like just almost the whole day. And you can see a gradient of grass that grows. Close to the base of the tree is much sparser grass because it doesn't get like a lot of light. And then as you make your way out from there, the grass actually gets like really lush and nice because it's getting that filtered. And then it's almost like a gradient. It stays really nice and green. And then outside of that, into the full sun, the grass gets like tall very quickly because it gets full blast. But then in the middle, it might actually be brown or dead because it's just too much.
Yeah, it definitely, because that affects the water usage of a plant. It's going to dry out faster.
Yeah.
So we have 2 gardens. We have one at our office that's in full sun.
That's like the R&D garden.
And it's it gets the most weeds. The plants do well in it, but it definitely requires far more inputs.
Yeah.
The soil's breaking down quicker. And we go home where we're growing in the same exact raised beds with the same soil, and we're under the canopy of oak trees where we're getting filtered light. And the growth is more even. The weeds are different. The water, I don't even during the dead of summer, we're not watering every day. We're watering still very infrequently and long, and getting deep watering. But if I go back to the office, I got to water every day.
Maybe twice in August, right? Yeah.
But we're using the same exact things. The plants come from the same place, but that sunlight there is incredibly difficult to deal with. So one of the things we're doing in our off season, we're actually going to install removable shade covers or shade cloth.
Yeah.
So if you're growing in an area where you're dealing with a lot of that sun and you only have, say, full blast sun all the time, it's important to create systems to help yourself be more successful. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put up some way to hold up shade cloth.
Right.
And we're going to make it where we can take it down or slide it back when we're in cool weather like right now. It's different. It's not as hot. So the hot sun is not as intense.
Right.
But that difference of temperature underneath that shade cloth is going to change the humidity. It's going to change how fast the moisture evaporates or transpires. And the plants are going to be healthier. They're going to thrive better.
Yeah. See, I love that. Okay, here's going to be a tangent, right? But this is what I'm here for is these tangents. One thing that I love about gardening is that I don't know any gardeners who believe that the earth is flat, because the way that we're talking about the sun right now is during the winter months, leading up to the winter months, the earth on its tilt means that we get a more obtuse angle of the sun coming in, so we get less of it throughout the day.
Right.
The earth is round, you guys. I'm just saying. Look, it's episode 3, and I'm stating a very brave and controversial thing here and saying that the earth is round.
And that is really important too, because that sunlight also can dictate when certain items grow. So we're moving we're in the fall time, so we're planting roots and we're planting greens primarily. And one of the favorite items for growing in the fall is onions.
Alliums,
alliums.
Right, yeah.
People often get confused about when to plant onions. Onions you grow them based upon length of day and cool temperatures.
Okay, right.
So we have to pick a variety here that's known as a short day onion.
Okay.
So we have short days and cool temperatures. Whereas if you move to the middle of the United States, they have intermediate day varieties that are going to grow with intermediate length days and cool temperatures. And you have long day onions. So you go north where the sun stays out for longer periods of time and it's much cooler, then they have different varieties that are most suited for there. So we have to have something that can bulb very quickly. So it's important to choose your variety right, and sometimes sun is a factor that affects that.
And knowing your zone is really important with that too, right? Like zone is dependent on a lot of things. It's dependent on sort of the heat index over the year round, but also it's that varying degree of sunlight throughout the year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, cabbage is also really popular to grow around here too, in this time.
Pretty much for us, always the most popular thing is mustard and turnip.
Oh yeah, mustard and turnips.
Mustard and turnip,
But onions. So here's the difference too: is you can technically plant an onion anytime you want, right? You can plant an onion anytime you want, but the how am I going to say this? The environment is going to change what happens to that onion. You can plant an onion in spring, and it will go over the summer. But it might not have a lot of that bulb growth, right? It might just have your
more green tops.
Your green tops,
and a very, very slender, almost like shallot shape.
Yeah.
So
or some of those little sweet bulb onions or something.
Yeah. A lot of people they get confused about onion. They look for onion sets, which are little bitty bulbs, but most of those little bulbs are intermediate or long day onions, so they're never going to make anything other than a pearl size.
Sure.
So you got to pay attention to what you're using and what that sunlight's going to provide, because it can really change what you can grow.
Okay, so what's really important to know about the area that a plant's going to grow in, or sort of its conditions, we're going to say. We've talked about light, we've talked about shade. What are some of the other factors that are here? Is water a factor?
Water absolutely is a factor. A simple thing, not necessarily related to the natural environment, but when you're setting up and getting prepared, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, they get out here, they want to start a garden, they put it all together, and they put it out in the back 40 of the backyard, and then there's no water. And
right.
The hose is strewn across the yard. It's frustrating. It's difficult. So
they have no irrigation.
Yeah, and for me, equally important is in your site selection is choosing close, easy access to water.
Okay. Yeah.
And also close common areas where you're constantly going through the garden. It's not like this.
Is it to keep an eye on them? Okay.
Because you're forcing yourself to be observant of the environment, and that's how you're successful in eliminating issues, catching things before they get too far when it comes to pests, disease, or any kind of other problem that might arise. So we have ours. We're within 5 foot of a spigot. So I can reach a hose anywhere I want without having to drag out 50 foot. I don't have to leave it out. I also, unlike most people, my garden's in the front yard, which is not.
Hey, that's a show garden.
It's not ideal for everybody.
It's only not ideal if you live in an HOA, but if you live in an HOA, you have other problems you have to deal with. But
when I get home every day, today, I got home, I get out of the truck, and the first thing I see is that garden, and I'm invited to it. Naturally, I'll always spot something out of the corner of my eye that makes me want I'm gonna go see what's happening over here. And I'll look, and even if I only spend 5 minutes out there, it has made me immensely more successful because I spot all the problems right out of the gate, because I'm so tuned in to looking and noticing it. Whereas if it's out in the backyard, in a busy lifestyle like today, you get out there, you go home, you don't have time to get out there, and then before long it's neglected, and then the soil's poor, then the pests are there, and it's just this big catalyst. So I think that there's a lot of value in thinking about where you're going to put it.
That's good advice, because as you well know, there are some plants that are persnickety or delicate that need more attention. There's some that are not, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big pepper grower. You know what I mean? I grow all kinds of peppers because I enjoy eating them. But peppers are really different within themselves.
Yes.
I have some peppers that are a freaking tank. You know what I mean? They love heat. They can dry out a little bit. So some of the cayenne peppers are like that. And then I have peppers that are persnickety, and they wilt the second that they're dried up and they're just hanging out. And the difference of those is just seeing them sooner lets me know I need to water this pepper.
And just that example as well can also show you a lot about placement of plants. Because, if you're getting a lot of full sun and it's drying out faster and they're wilty, I had the same problem with some of my particular variety of bell peppers.
Yeah.
The ones that were getting the most sun would wilt
fast. Fast.
They would be fine
Yeah.
when I wake up in the morning, and even if I watered appropriately, by the time I got home, they looked terrible.
Because even though they're watered, they're still hot. They're like, I'm too hot.
Then the ones that were 2 beds, they're directly in front of each other, 2 beds back closer to the house, getting a little less sun. Totally different. They had their own struggles, but they weren't because of wilting. And I ended up removing those plants because I realized that I made a poor placement decision.
Yeah, right.
And then I have a cayenne that was in that same bed as those ones that kept wilting. It's perfectly fine.
It's like, I'm cool.
And I don't know if there's any truth to it, but I believe I've noticed from my experiences that the hotter the pepper, the typically more resilient to the heat it has become.
I think that is an anecdotal thing or one of those kind of folksy wisdoms that's happened, but I've seen it too. I've seen it too.
I don't know if there's any truth to that.
Because the habaneros that I grow they just chilling, they're rocking.
Yeah.
And I got some Scotch bonnets that I've planted. They don't even wilt.
Yeah.
They really don't. It doesn't bother them at all.
Yeah. It's
I'm also a pretty big advocate for container gardening first, specifically like with peppers, right? With peppers, I started planting those, and you can move that around. It's in its soil, and it's in a container, and you can really experiment at first with this plant placement and see how these environmental factors will, result in a plant. You really can. And
we've done that a lot, just a different plant, but we had some... it's a type of mulberry, and we were growing them in a container because they're a dwarf species. And we're at them, they kept looking like complete garbage. And
my mulberry looks like, I have a dwarf mulberry, and it looks like garbage. I don't know what to do with it.
We pulled it into the shade.
Yeah,
it gets virtually nothing but morning sun, and it has exploded in growth, and it looks like a totally different plant. So I left the other one, I moved it to a slightly shadier spot. It did a little better, but it's not the same. So I agree with you. Like growing in containers or having something, using them as your experiment to be able to test your environment.
And then you can take it out of the container and plant it where it likes it the most.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I'm going to do with my mulberry now that you say that. And I've moved it around several times, and it doesn't do anything. But I've never really moved it into full shade yet. So I guess that's what I'll do next.
And now there could be one of the things that could happen with that. Maybe the full shade could prevent it from ever fruiting.
Sure.
I don't know. But and then again, it's also teaching me that sometimes not every variety is well suited for the environment that I have. So you really have to pay attention to the site. And I think a simple tip, people talk about it all the time, but like when you're orienting your beds, having them oriented where they're east to west.
Right, because the sun moves across it.
Yeah. You get more even sun.
Even sun, that makes sense.
And it helps prevent some things from getting shaded out, or some things getting too much sun and then not enough.
Yeah.
So that's a simple thing that you can do when you're looking at your area.
Yeah.
But I think like if you're starting anew, you need to get out there 2-3 days, really a week, and observe what is actually happening. Where does the sun come up? Where does it go? How hot is it? And I think too, one of the things that most people don't ever realize is that you also have heat transfer.
Okay, what is that?
So let's say you plant a garden like near the house. So like mine is very close to my house.
Okay.
And if where it is was getting full afternoon sun, what would end up happening is that the sun would be reflecting off my windows in the front of my house, and it bouncing off, and you kind of get that magnifying glass effect.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it causes plants to kind of they scorch. The leaves get scorched. They dry out really, really fast.
Yeah, they're struggling.
That can happen off brick walls. It can happen if things are surrounded by too much nearby concrete. You get all that heat transfer. So you kind of do have to look at other external factors like structures and make sure that you're not placing it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And then in turn you spend all this time and nothing's really doing well. You can't keep it watered because it's too hot.
Sure.
And it's all because of placement.
And talking about structures too, this isn't really so we've been talking a lot about like when plants thrive and planting them in the growing season and all of this, but the winter exists as well, and sometimes we struggle to overwinter a lot of our plants. And what I do is I'll put some of my plants sort of in a breezeway I have, which kind of keeps them more safe from an ambient cold temperature, but I have to worry about the wind when that happens because the wind will be going through that breezeway and drop the temperature by maybe 20 degrees at certain times, and I've killed plants just from winter winds where they are.
You can also, the same structures that might make things too hot can also be windbreaks.
Yeah, it can make them,
so you have to think about like those cold times. We're lucky where we live because it is essentially a different microclimate. We can grow something year-round, all the time in the soil. But if we place our garden or our plants in the wrong place, we can make them more susceptible to those like one-off, like really, really cold temps or extreme droughts. So we do have to, we got to be mindful of that and use those same structures to our advantage, I think. So
yeah, we are lucky. There are a lot of places that have really varying microclimates, right? Like if we lived in, say, Napa Valley, California, which is very, very successful at growing a variety of grapes, they do that because it's rolling hills, and every dip and peak in that is a different microclimate, and they have to worry about how the humidity rolls over the hills and where it lands and where it spills out because those plants will rely on a morning dew or a morning misting, and if they miss that, then they won't thrive. So we are actually pretty lucky here in 9A, you said?
9A.
Right, and it's flat. There's no real... we have a lot less to worry about than a lot of other people.
Interestingly enough, that's why like grapes, you don't see a lot of people grow grapes as a fruit here other than like muscadines.
Yeah,
because most grapes can't handle the humidity and they get Pierce's disease. So a lot of the varieties that are grown here that can grow, because there are some places, there's a place in Winnie that has a vineyard.
There is,
but it's very, very specific grapes can be grown here.
Yeah, specific cultivars. And there's, oh my God, there's so many cultivars of plants that you can really grow in your specific area once you've identified what the plant's needs are.
And really, no matter what, there's no like simple right answer. We're just going to be like, oh, I can plant this and just know.
Yeah.
Everything's a giant experiment. You just got to get out there and like you've got to test your space and you've got to learn what grows where. And I really think it's important to don't always put your eggs in one basket. Like plant groupings in different spots. If you have more than one bed, like space things out because you're going to find out really quick what grows on one side of the garden and what doesn't like this side. And you're going to eventually be able to identify the differences in those factors, even though it's such a small space, simply by just observing. So.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's about it, right, for this episode. It's has a lot of practical advice you've
It's a basic
given.
concept, but too many people just get out there in a hurry because life's busy, and they just throw it together. And if it's not well thought out, sometimes that's your own demise, and you get frustrated. So I always like to point those things out because I want you to be successful.
And it seems like the key to this one really is observation.
Yeah.
Right? And a practical approach. Sit outside, view your space, see where everything comes in before you start planting.
It's good practice for when you actually do become successful with it and you're out there just sitting there and like observing the fruits of your labor and just like taking it in,
lemonade.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to be it. Would you like to tell everybody listening what next episode is going to be?
Yeah, so next episode we're going to talk about companion planting.
Oh, my God, that's one of my favorites. I'm ready to hear the breakdown of all the witchcraft of that, maybe with some science.
Yeah.
So we'll see you back here next time for companion planting. Thanks, guys, and keep gardening.
See ya.